To everybody, and it's a great pleasure to be here. I would like to spend this 15 minutes to discuss and with some detail what means for all of us what is going on in the present transformation of the energy industry and in general of the economy of the world as we get to grasp the depth of the problem we are facing around the climate change. What we have in front of us today is a clear sign that our activity on this planet since roughly a couple of centuries has brought this climate to a situation in which we need to urgently change our behavior and we need to reduce the emission of greenhouse gas into the atmosphere so that the rest of the natural forces slowly will bring that back to the right level. So it's up to us to change a little bit this story. And to do that, we have made a lot of progress because I think we can be happy that there is no more such a big question about whether is or not our behavior the cause of all this, or whether something has happened in the past that is repeating itself again. No, it's us, and this is very clear. So that's done. Now what we need to do is take stock and look at, can we change? Can we actually improve the situation? And the answer is, it can be done. And we need to understand that it can be done. And this is another good piece of news. By doing it, we'll also increase the economic activity and well-being of our population, of all of us in the transition. So not only we need to do it, but it's also our interest to do it because we have technologies today that enable this change to happen properly. Now, when I say this, it's always a little bit a separation between what happened in the past, our misbehavior, what we can do right now, what technologies do we have that today can be deployed, and what we still do not have. So what science fiction movie do we have to project on our screen and then work at materializing it in reality and not just in the movie? So these three time frames are really important because there is a tendency to put them all together, and that is confusing and also discouraging to some effect. So yes, we have been extremely naughty as a human race with our planet, and we have done damage to the system so that climate change is happening. But also we've been very clever in devising technologies that today are economically viable and extremely aggressive in that sense, that can change this story. And we do have in front of us a decade, that is a time period between now and 2030, where deploying aggressively and without any hesitation these technologies, we can definitely stop the growth of CO2 and greenhouse gases released in the atmosphere and work for the phase that follows. That's a phase that follows in the other 2 decades, 2040 and 2050. These 2 decades will have to show that not only we have stopped the growth of greenhouse gas concentration in our atmosphere, but we can reduce it. So we can work to bring it back to the levels that safely allow climate to fluctuate in those narrow bands that are tolerated by our bodies and our way of living. So what can we do? What is it that we have to do in this first phase? We have to agree that we have to stop extraction of additional fossil fuels around the planet. This was a big surprise that the International Energy Agency has brought to the world 2 weeks ago when they published their report. It's quite surprising because it comes from an agency that has been established by the oil companies a long time ago during the first oil shocks in the 70s. But it is a testimony of the foresight and capability to really reinvent themselves that AIA has come up with this piece of news. We should stop trying to retrieve additional resources from with additional exploration and focus on changing. This change can be done using technologies that today we have, basically electrifying heavily the use of energy around our homes, the way in which we transport ourselves, and the industrial activities. And while electrifying, decarbonize the electricity which we use. And that can be done by keeping and accelerating the growth of renewable energy and in general carbon neutral generation around the world. Now, that means using technologies that we have today. We have technology on renewables that is competitive with thermal generation. We have technology on automotive industries that is today clearly picking up speed and enables to electrify the way in which we transport ourselves. And we have technologies today that can reduce the carbon footprint also of the carbon intensive industries, provided they are aggressively pursued. So these things entail an incredible effort and a transformation of the industry and the economic activity of mankind in the next 10 years that is of colossal proportions. And in doing that, we have evidence, all the studies suggest that there will be a net increase in manpower occupation, so creation of millions and millions of jobs, and a net increase in GDP. So an improvement in the growth of GDP at world level. But this comes at the expense of certain sectors that do not see this growth at all. Actually, they see a contraction of their business. So it requires a transition also in the workforce and in the millions of people that today are occupied in industries that cannot keep the same activity if we want to really do this. That requires, therefore, a big effort from countries and politicians around the world to devise systems that enable a transition from one sector, the one that gets less and less active, to another one that gets more and more active, and a reskilling and a retraining and a conversion of professional capabilities of millions of people around the world. Without doing that, this transition will take longer. It will happen anyway, but it will take longer, and it will be also very controversial. So I think that is the first thing that we need to address. We need to understand that this entails the changing of habits and the change of professional activities from many, many people that needs to be done properly. Secondly, during these 10 years, we need to work a lot on devising those technologies that today are not mature yet. They are not in the money yet, and in many ways, they're not even existing and in a satisfactory manner, so that by the end of 2030, we can use them to progressively decarbonize and further decarbonize our activities. So we're talking about a lot about hydrogen. The hydrogen we need is not there. We need to use it. We need to find proper ways of generating green hydrogen with costs that are acceptable to the industry, which today are not. And that requires time. It can be done. It is a curve of cost reduction that other industries have done before. PV panels have done it, batteries have done it, and other technologies have done it. We see no reason why this shouldn't happen, but it requires a lot of innovation. We cannot do it with the same technologies we have today, most likely. It requires a lot of innovation and a lot of industrial application to bring a niche product into a large industrial sector. So it's a big effort. 10 years is probably the right time. And finally, we need to really take carbon out of the atmosphere. I know this is a little bit direct air capture and the separation of CO2 from the atmosphere with that today we are in is simply not there yet. Whether we can get directly to direct air capture or get there indirectly through carbon capture and sequestration, it remains to be seen. But both technologies are not satisfactory at this moment, and we need to work hard to make them satisfactory by 2030. I have to say that the fact that a new technology or a technology is worked at doesn't necessarily mean it's successful. But often trying has implications that are difficult to predict, but get us there in strange ways. There is a mysterious way in which technology operates. The important thing is dedicate ourselves to it without telling ourselves science fiction stories. It's a question of trying and error. And typically, every time this is applied worldwide, it works. Finally, the existing transient that today we have out of the pandemic shows how important it is to work together. There is no bigger example than the one we have been experiencing in the last year and a half than what it means to be united as a global force, and you look at what science have done in finding vaccines, and now what big efforts, logistic effort, all companies are going through, and all states are going through to vaccinate billions of people. Today we have about 2 billions of world population vaccinated. This was unthinkable a year ago. So we should not be afraid of this challenge. It is something that can be achieved, provided we are united and work together. And this is maybe the biggest effort that we have to carry out. Let's be frank and open to ourselves. And when I say open power, I mean really this. Let's tell us the truth. This is something that we can do, but we can do it only if we work together, leaving no one behind. So that's a little bit my contribution to this big effort. Thank you very much for your attention. So good morning.